We are committed to creating a safe and supportive space for our guests and listeners, and to provide information and tools that will help our listeners understand, manage, and overcome trauma. We understand that the healing journey can bring up challenging emotions. Therefore, we want to warn our audience that certain episodes may contain discussions or stories that could be triggering for some individuals. The content of the podcast is for educational and informative purposes only, and we encourage you to practice self-care and discretion while listening, and to reach out to a trusted support system or professional if you feel overwhelmed and need help on your healing journey. So welcome back to Healing and Growing Hand in Hand podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Tickle, and our guest today is Nicole Poulton. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Me too. I love it. And today Nicole's going to share her story of trauma, and most importantly, overcoming the trauma. And I've got my little notes here because I want to say it right. And how trauma leads to addiction, because we were just kind of touching on that. And that's a whole story in and of itself. And so we're going to get into that. So again, welcome, and tell us about you.
Yeah. So it's kind of a loaded
I know,
question,
right?
I'll give you kind of the high point. So a little bit of my background for those of you who are listening that have never heard of me before. That is super fine. I'll catch you up to speed. So when I was growing up, I was born into a house that was not very constructive. There was a lot of abuse, kind of the whole package deal. I got, a lot of the physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional, financial, just whatever kind of thrown into the pot.
All of it, huh?
And then as time went on, like I just couldn't really handle things, and just emotionally I shut off. I had to numb out and like to be able to actually survive.
How old were you when you felt like that?
Yeah, so it all started, my first memories is abuse. And so at least 4 years old, but probably from day one.
Me too.
And it went all the way until I left the house. So for most of the abuse, the sexual abuse stopped when I was 15, and we can get into that a little bit too. But yeah, so it started just right from the jump. And I feel like it's kind of a blessing though, because in a way, like, I know this is crazy to say, but if you had to be abused, I didn't know that it was abuse. I thought it was just normal.
Right.
Like when you grow up in that way, you don't realize that other families don't have that same dynamic. And so I feel like it's kind of a blessing in that way, because I was able to have what I thought was a normal childhood.
And you could function as much as you could, right?
And I could function. There were a lot of emotional skeletons in the closet. I knew that by my teenage years, I could feel like, okay, this energy is different. And I started picking up little hints and clues that, like the parents of my friends were not treating their children like this and stuff like that. I started to be exposed to what's normal and what's not normal. And ultimately, when I was 15, I broke my back. I suffered from an injury, a skiing injury. And that day, I think it was one of the greatest blessings of my life, because breaking my back and having that injury, I now could not be sexually abused. I'm in this big back brace that, as a freshman in high school, it was not ideal for my outfit of choice.
No.
It was not easy to style, but that's fine. Yeah, so it stopped the sexual abuse, but it kickstarted my addictions. And I had access now to prescription pain pills, and being a teenager and in pain, I didn't have any way to like really regulate. I didn't know how many I should take, how often. And so I started just using as much as I could, and it helped numb the emotional pain too. And that's why I kept using them probably longer than I should have when it comes to the physical injury. So, I started using my pills. I started getting a little bit more rebellious. I started drinking and smoking, and I started using cocaine. And there was a point, I was turning 21, so I had been using all of this mess of substances for about 6 years. And on my 21st birthday, I actually overdosed. I mixed too many things together, and I was not not doing okay. And in the middle of the overdose, I had this like epiphany that this is not my life. I can actually choose something else. At this point, I was just living in reaction mode, just whatever life would throw at me, just trying to handle it and get to the next day. And, so this was the first time in my life that I realized, like, wait a minute, I could actually design my life.
Yeah.
I can make choices that have different outcomes. I don't have to just wait for, whatever to happen to happen. And so from then I got sober, and in my sobriety, I was really trying to understand human behavior and psychology and habits, and why do we do certain things? Why do we have addictions? Why do some people, get addicted to alcohol and some people can drink casually? And, so why is it not just like it's not black and white? And so I learned as much as I could. And in the process, other people started coming up to me and asking me, hey, Nicole, like, how are you able to stay sober? And so I started teaching them what I was learning. And as time went on, I realized this is something that people need. And so I started a business, and now that's what I do. I help people get sober, and I'm an addiction and sobriety coach. So helping people get through really that feeling of maybe this is something I want, all the way up into, 1, 2, 3 years sober.
Excellent. So you're an addiction and sobriety coach. I haven't heard of that, and I like that. You didn't tell me that. I like that.
It's funny because I feel like, it's not super like, it's not a saturated market for
I'm
sure,
surprised.
but it's definitely high demand. Like, we need it so bad. Our traditional ways of recovery just don't work.
I had one guest on that was a gray drinking coach. Like, she helped with gray drinking, which was really interesting. So it's the area where you don't get drunk, but you drink every night, kind of,
Yes.
And
I've never heard that term before, but that's exactly the problem, where it's like, it's not bad enough where you're overdosing like I did, but it's still not aligned with your goals and values. And that's what I say. It's like, if you have, if it's not sustainable long term, you don't have to wait for the universe to push you to rock bottom. Like, we can do something about it now.
Exactly. I know, because I used to do that. And it's funny, I learned it from my dad, actually, because my dad, I guess you could call him a gray drinker, because I'm trying to remember if he drank every night, and I think he did, but it wasn't a lot, and he didn't get drunk. I don't know if I ever saw my dad drunk, honestly. Never saw my mom drunk. But I remember, especially on his day off, he would be drinking beer all day. And so when I was probably at the height of my survival mode, I was just drinking 2 beers at night, just 2 beers, maybe 3 every night. It would start out Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and then it stretched to Monday, then Tuesday, and the next thing you know, it's every night. It's every night.
It's going.
And what's the big deal? I'm not getting drunk.
You don't get drunk, but you tally it up, and it's like, okay, well, how many is 15 drinks a week? How is that actually affecting your health and your mindset and your happiness and your career, your relationships, like everything?
And and what happened at that time, I had this sense that I was going to go through something really, really big. And I knew in my heart that if I continued this type of drinking, and when I go through this, I'm going to cross a line. I just knew in my heart I was going to cross that line, and I was going to end up becoming probably an alcoholic. And so I quit. I quit drinking altogether for 10 years.
Good for you.
And you know what happened right after I quit drinking? And thank you, Lord, you gave me a little bit of time, because I quit drinking, and I don't know how long it was, maybe a month or 2 or so, when shit hit the fan in my life. And it was big. It was really, really big. It was my marriage, and it was a really tough time. And I am so grateful for the fact that I was sober, completely sober, going through that. And that really kickstarted a lot of my healing.
It's amazing how I always say it. I mean, it has a time and a place. There's a purpose for substances, and those of you listening, like, you don't have to be addicted to like alcohol or drugs. Like, we all have something. Look at sugar, or even exercise or work,
TV,
or social media, TV. Yeah, like excessive spending. Like, the list goes on, and it's always a solution to a deeper problem.
correct.
We're always trying to get a need met, or numb something. We're either trying to not feel something, and by shedding that, getting rid of that quote unquote crutch, forces us to actually address what's going on. And like that happened to me too. As soon as I got sober, it's like, oh wait, I have all these emotions and this trauma I've never processed, and I don't know how to process it. So I had to learn a new skill, learn how to actually feel in a healthy way without that crutch of the substances, without, going off the deep end.
I know. And I was, and I still, this thought still comes to my mind, but I know better, is that I didn't want those emotions coming up. It's too painful. What if I start crying and I can't stop? Because that was my thing. I thought, I'm going to start crying. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to lose it. I'm going to completely lose it. I never did. And now I understand. Then I didn't understand. So I would stuff them, right? So then I would do some kind of self-medication, whether it's being watching TV or something that would distract me from the pain. And over the years, I've learned, of course, that that's, that is not healthy, and I need to let the emotions out. I still don't like it. I admit I don't like it. It's a very vulnerable place. It's, but I also know that it's only going to be for a short time. I'm going to let this emotion out. It's not going to consume me. I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to actually feel better. And this little emotion isn't going to keep tapping at my shoulder because it wants to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. You can actually just deal with it and move on.
Right. So let's kind of talk about, how you kind of overcame the trauma. And even, we were saying before we started the recording about addictions, because addictions just isn't pain pills. It's not just alcohol. It can be, there's so many addictions. And, honestly, I didn't know until probably last 5 years or so that television, watching TV, is a way of self-medicating. I didn't know that because I would watch a lot in the evening. When I think back on it, I definitely used it to like shut down my brain and to try to function. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different addictions that we probably aren't even aware of.
Oh yeah. I think addiction is it's a tough term because people don't like to be labeled as an addict, right? But if you look at it from a behavior standpoint, a behavior that we turn to often to avoid a feeling is basically the same kind of thing. So if we don't want to feel, or if we're bored, I know that like a lot of my clients, they feel bored and so they eat, and then they can't stop eating. And so, it's like the binge eating.
I did that too. That was my big one.
So common. And then with the TV, it's like, okay, so you just had a hard day at work or a long day, and you come home and you just want to unwind. So you don't want to have to like process all of that stress and exhaustion. You want to just zone out, right? And so it's like you could watch TV easily for a couple hours. And now, because of cell phones, we don't even have to wait until the end of the day. We can just pop it up, on our breaks, or just like when we're supposed to be working, or on our, just whenever. And it's nuts. Like there's that desire to not have to process and feel, just a little way to escape. And there's nothing wrong with it. I look at it as it's all about what your goals and your values are, and is it sustainable? So, from a logistics standpoint, from your health, like it's probably better to watch TV than to like use heroin.
Right.
But you look at like the sustainability of it. Is it aligned with your goals if you come home and 100% of your extra time is spent in front of a TV? If you want to prioritize family and nutrition, and it's like, what if now you're putting TV in front of these other things? It's like, Yeah, no, it's not as bad as the drugs and the alcohol, quote unquote,
Right.
not as bad, but is it sustainable? Is it helping you reach your goals? Is it helping you push to your next level and being the best version of you? You know, it's like, and so that's where it's like, no, TV is not bad.
Right.
No, drinking, I mean, this is kind of a hot topic, but it's like drinking, yes, is, you know, like a carcinogen and cancer and all that stuff, but if you want to drink socially, I'm not saying that that's bad. It's just aligned. Is it aligned with your goals and your
Mhm.
values, and is it sustainable? You know, so everybody has to do their own kind of self reflection on that to decide, like, is this a problem or
Right,
not?
right, right. And I used to do the double whammy is I used to binge eat while I was watching TV. So
Yeah,
I would have dinner,
we're not alone.
but this was but
Yeah,
that was a habit that started when I was little. Like I started binge eating when I was in junior high, but even before that, get this. So my parents, to solve the problem of my brother abusing me over the TV and who's going to watch what, they bought me a TV to put in my room.
perfect.
Perfect. So I could just go to the kitchen, get my little munchies, go in my room, shut the door, turn the TV on, and shut the world
Mhm.
out.
Isolate and zone out.
Isolate and eat. And I didn't understand at the time why I was putting weight on. I, honest to God, did not understand it. I didn't understand that I was eating too much because I would literally finish dinner and then I would just graze through the rest of the evening. Chips, ice
Yeah,
cream, whatever. And I took that into my adult life and I've recently broke it. I mean, it's been the last couple of years, but I've recently broke it because it just turned into a habit.
yeah. Yeah, well, 60% of our life is habit. And
Mm,
so if we don't question our habits, 60% of our life is just determined for us. And a lot of the time, like you said,
that's
like
good
it
to know.
starts in adolescence.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so like, I don't know, there's so many examples, but I think that one is huge where it's like, what are your habits around food? What are your
Yeah.
habits around exercise? Like, and the mindset, and you know, it's like if you look at food as bad, you know, we don't have to demonize food because we used to have a problem, you know.
Mhm.
You also don't have to demonize alcohol, you don't have to demonize exercise. Like it's for a time and a place, you know. And so I know that there's people who go to the gym and work out to the point where their body cannot
Mhm.
stand it, you know, or like, not to throw him under the bus, my stepdad, he'll be fine that I share this story. My stepdad would go to the gym 2 times a day and work out for 3 hours at a time because he was like trying to compete in bodybuilding stuff, and he suffered an injury. And it's like an injury is like your body is telling you like, hey, this,
Too
I
much.
can't handle it, right? And so, too much. And then you go back too soon because you don't want to lose your progress and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, well, that could be looked at as some form of, you know, self-soothing or self-medicating because you don't want to feel certain things. And I know for his situation in like the specifics, he had this goal, and not saying anything bad about exercise or goals or anything like that, but I think it's so personal to the individual of what is the intention behind this
Mhm.
action. And a lot of times there is none. There's just no intention.
That's
So
a
when I
great
go to the
question.
fridge, spoon after spoon of cookie dough, there's no intention. My mind is just trying to be entertained, and you know, and it can just pile on.
That's a good question because it is so automatic. Because I've been working from home now for a few years, and especially with the podcast, and if I get bored, I can catch myself just walking to the kitchen, opening the cabinet, and grabbing something, and that's exactly what I do now. I'm like, wait a minute, am I really hungry? I mean, I've really because the binge eating was a big deal for me because my weight fluctuated over the years. I mean, a lot. I put on a lot of weight and then I would lose it. Um, and I literally had to get a new relationship with food. And this is probably true with anything. If you feel like it's okay for you to drink, but you're doing what I was doing, the gray drinking, you can taper it back. Well, I had to get a new relationship with food because I was doing that. Oh, that broccoli over there with that little bit of cheese sauce on it. Well, I can't have that because it's got the cheese sauce on it. I have to have broccoli that's plain that maybe has a little salt on it if I'm lucky. Like I've had to frame my whole thinking about food and eating. And
Yeah.
and it's been a process, and breaking the habit of eating in the evening, because I was doing it without even thinking. I wasn't even stopping and thinking, am I hungry?
Mm-hmm.
I was just sitting
Yeah.
in front of the TV, stuffing my body and stuffing my brain.
And I used to do that with pain pills.
Yeah. And you know what?
Like, like,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
it's it's not like I'm in pain physically with my back. It's like it could be years later. Like I said, it was a 6-year addiction. So the bones were healed
Yeah.
long ago. And it's just, is my brain starting to have normal thoughts again? Because we don't want that, go take a couple pills. And so, but it wasn't intentional. It wasn't
Right.
like I had any thought to it. It's just like, oh, okay,
You
like
just
my
reacted.
body is just just reaction. Let me go take some pills. Yeah. And so I think everybody has something. And so it's just how mindful are we
Yeah.
of these habits, considering 60% of our life is habit. And same thing with our thoughts, which is also like a whole nother rabbit hole I can get into. But it's like our thoughts, so many people are more negative than they want to be or that they think they are. And if 60% of our thoughts are habit as well, your habits or your thoughts create your emotions, which then create your actions. So it's just patterns,
Yeah.
recognizing if we don't like the actions we're doing, let's backtrack. What thoughts are you having that kickstart those
Right.
actions? And that's kind of what I help teach my clients. It's like pattern recognition when you're getting sober is the most important thing. It's like if you can recognize when your triggers are happening or what your triggers even are, then you can anticipate them happening and then prevent them altogether.
Yeah. That's the thing is, and I've said
Mhm.
this so many times in my podcast, and I'm going to say it again here, because we're just describing what self-awareness is. Having the self-awareness and slowing down, and because so much of it is habit. You're right. And we take the stuff that we did when we were children that helped us cope with what we were dealing with, and it worked at the time. It got us through that moment. And then we carry it into our adult life. And by that point, we don't even think about it. Like you say, and I've said it too. You don't even think about it. It doesn't even go through your brain. You just go and do it. And so
Mhm.
what we need to do is, and it's a process. This does not happen overnight, but you do need to become
Yeah. Totally.
more self-aware, slow down, pay attention to what your body's telling you, pay attention to the thoughts, and question them.
Mhm.
Question them, because that is how you break those habits. I mean, that's how, I shouldn't say that's how I broke my habits, is becoming self-aware and questioning it. Like when I catch myself going in front of the refrigerator and I don't even remember really walking there, I'm lacking self-awareness there. Because I literally would open the refrigerator door and go, oh, why am I even here? Like, wait a minute, am I hungry? No, I'm bored. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to
Yeah.
go take a walk.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's this quote that says a belief, like what is a belief? It's just a thought that you don't question.
Woo! Oh, I got it.
Right?
Right. So it's a thought you don't question. Oh, I
Mhm.
like that. That's so true. I'm writing these down because
Right?
these are all golden nuggets. I have at the end of this, I now do a two takeaways, and I've got 3 or 4 already here. So it's
Oh, that's
great.
awesome.
So tell us your kind of a little more detail of your process of coming out of your trauma and how you kind of work through it. Cause I know, our healing is a journey, and we're on this journey until the end of our life. And so we all have our different things that helped us kind of work through that trauma. So what were some of your big things of helping you get out of self-awareness, obviously, right? Because that's what helped you kind of recognize, but helped you kind of work through this, because you, like me, had trauma from the beginning. Our very foundation was trauma. That's all we knew. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting. That was one of the 2 takeaways I'm saying, though, is that was our normal. We didn't know any different. So we made the best of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I have I mean, you guys, it is definitely a journey for healing from the trauma. There was a lot of tactics that I used, like going to a therapist and using different kinds of therapy, EMDR. You know, I went to seminars and I read the self-help books and listened to podcasts like this, and just tried to learn as much as possible. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that helped me finally let go of all of that pain
Uh-oh.
is this crazy radical idea of taking responsibility. And a lot of people don't like it when I say that, because
Yeah.
if you look at my, if you look at my example or my situation specifically, no, it is not my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault that you
No.
had trauma or abuse or anything like that. It's not your fault. No. It was not my fault that my first memories are being sexually abused when I was 4 years old. Like, no, it's not my fault. And I'm not responsible for that. I'm not responsible for the trauma that was caused. I'm responsible for letting it go. And it's kind of like, this is a famous saying too, holding on to the trauma, holding on to the pain and the hurt, no matter what it is, anger. It's like being in front of your abuser, giving them a glass and yourself a glass, and you drinking the poison, expecting them to die. Right? And so it's like, it's only hurting you. And as much as we want to get revenge, maybe you might be in that revenge phase, or you want to have them come to you and apologize. You want some kind of, you want to feel seen for what you've been
Validated.
through. And, yeah, validated. And as long as you're holding on to those things, at least this is my
Me
personal
too.
experience. I held on to those for literally 20 years. It was too long, but I held on to it for so long that it was only hurting
Yeah.
me. And it wasn't until I let go of all expectations of other people and I just took responsibility for what is my life today. How can I be a better person today? And just practicing forgiveness, and not forgiving in the fact that you are like accepting that behavior is
Right.
okay. We're not validating that behavior. It's still not
Nope.
okay. But forgiveness for, yourself, forgiveness in just this idea of we can move on, because the forgiveness is for you, it's not for the other
Correct.
person. So in my experience, like, I don't have a relationship with my dad. Even, he was my abuser and I have forgiven him. I have found the good in it. And this is what really gets people's engines revved up.
Yeah.
It's on the good. So it's like looking at, okay, being sexually abused, obviously not ideal. What good came out of it? I now have a deeper understanding of other women who have the same kind of background. I now have a career in helping people do this kind of stuff. It's like there's so much good. He modeled the exact man that I didn't want to marry, and now my marriage is amazing. It's like there's so much good that came out of it. And really being intentional on finding that good and making that list as long as possible, forgiving, and just taking responsibility that it's not anybody else's job to quote unquote fix me. I'm not saying that you're broken.
Yeah.
Because you're not broken.
Yeah.
Not at all. But it is your responsibility to be happy.
It is.
It's nobody else is going to come and say, hey, let me take you by the hand and bring you to this, this fountain of happiness. Nobody's going to do that. Unfortunately, I wish I could do that for everybody listening, but that's your responsibility. And so that's what I mean by take responsibility.
Yeah.
And so I think those are the biggest things. It's these mental shifts, these paradigm shifts that until I had these realizations, I was just in pain.
Yeah. You touched on something that's really important too, though, is, no, it's not our fault or our responsibility for what happened to us. but it is our responsibility what we do with it, right? So when we
Mhm.
became aware of the fact that we were abused, and what's empowering now, like for me, I realized I was abused, but there was no help out there really. There was therapy, but I couldn't afford it, but there wasn't what there is now. um but
Yeah.
it's empowering to know that, um you can take responsibility, and you can take your power back, and you can take responsibility in how you react to stuff. um and I guess what I'm saying is, look at it this way. Yes, we were abused, but now there are tools, and there are resources out there that can help us. We don't have to live with all the backlash of trauma. We can heal from it and have a healthy, loving life. But there are steps that we got to take, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the things that we do when we're in survival mode before we really start our healing, we do some damage, right? That is what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. That's where we can become aware and realize I'm acting that way, not because I'm a jerk. I'm acting that way because there's trauma. I'm acting that way because there's a root of something in me that needs to be worked out. That's how we need to look at it, instead of, because what I used to do is just beat myself up. I'm a horrible person. I used to just go down the list of awful things about myself, not realizing I am responding this way because of my trauma that is not healed. I wasn't even aware of the depth of the trauma. So now you're aware you have trauma.
Yeah.
Now there is a lot of resources out there that can help you. And you just take it baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, and put people around you that are going to support you in that, because you're going to do things that are going to feel crazy, or, I used to say stupid things that I would do, but that's not you. That is your body reacting and your mind reacting to the unhealed trauma. And I'm glad you said you weren't broken, because that's exactly what I said about myself. I knew I had pain, but I knew I wasn't broken.
Mhm.
So you
Yeah.
really explained
Yeah.
that well.
Yeah, anybody who goes through hard stuff, I mean, your value is still there. There's this other analogy. It's funny. I saw this video and it was described so perfectly. This girl, she was holding her purse. She's like, picture this as a baby. So everybody listening, imagine I have a baby in my arms. This baby, they're brand new, just a couple weeks old, and they cry a lot. They need help with, their food and their diaper, and they want to feel loved and have their needs met. And that's very validating. We need, it's okay for them to cry. It's okay for them to ask for
Right.
help. But how old does that baby, like, at what point is that not okay? Is it 2 years old? They're not allowed to ask for help?
Mm,
No, that's weird. We still help toddlers. At 6, they're trying to ride a bike. We can still help them. At 14, and maybe they need some hygiene products. We need to go get them some deodorant. They're going through some stuff. They need some
right.
help. At 16, they want to drive. We can help them learn to drive. At what point did you lose your value that you don't feel like you can ask for help?
Ooh.
Because you are still that 6-year-old. You're still that 16-year-old. You are still you of value, and you deserve help. But now it's just hard because you're in an adult body and it feels like you're not allowed to ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that analogy is just so powerful, because you realize, like, wait a minute, like, if I'm obviously, I'm not calling you a baby, but if you are still just as valuable and worthy of asking for help as that baby, why is it so hard? And so it's
Yeah.
like, yes, we go through things. We have bad things happen to us. And it's just another thing we have to ask for help to get through. And so, no, you didn't, go in your diaper. It's not that problem. It's a little bit more complex than that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the same kind of situation. You just need to ask for help. And we get ourselves so wrapped up in these problems where we think we're completely alone, where we've gone through something super hard, and we can't just cry out to our parents, or we can't cry out to people in our circle. We can't ask people for help. I don't know why, it just with society or something, we feel
It's
ashamed. We
taboo.
feel like we shouldn't have the first place.
Asking
Yes,
for
it's
help
taboo.
equals weakness. That's how
Yes.
it's looked at.
When in reality, isn't that strength? It's like,
Yes.
don't you think that it's so brave and empowering to be able to actually ask for help?
It is. It is. And I know for so many people, and I used to be one of them. I was so afraid to ask for help. I refused to ask for help. And it was my mindset because, and I think you could probably relate to this because like I said, we have the same background. When your foundation is people aren't helping you and people are abusing you, you learn real quick not to ask for help because it's going to be
Yes, it
painful.
makes things worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes in a situation where it's not safe, sometimes it's worse to speak up.
So it can be a trigger.
But I mean,
it can be a trigger to ask for help.
Yeah. I had to overdose in order to realize I needed to ask for help.
God. Yeah.
And that's why I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because those of you listening, you don't have to wait until it's quote unquote too late or you hit rock bottom. It's like, no matter what your situation is, you can go ask for help. And maybe it's not your circle of influence that you currently have. Maybe it's a therapist or a doctor or, somebody who can help you in your specific situation. Like, there is definitely somebody out there. And with the internet nowadays, like, you don't even have to leave your house probably to get help.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's just so much information out there. I mean, there's, in some cases too much information and not always super accurate information, but there is. And that's what's so refreshing. And that is the number one reason why I created the podcast, is to help shorten people's pain. Because I suffered for many years because there wasn't the stuff out there to help. So I had to kind of figure it out, a lot of it on my own. And I wasn't successful with some of it, right? Or it took a really long time. And what's refreshing now is there's coaches like you and there's podcasts like this that get that information out there. And the thing that I really literally pray and hope is that people can connect to your story. And all of a sudden, they're not alone. Because they had the same thoughts that you had, where before they're thinking, oh, I've got these thoughts. I'm crazy. Nobody else has these thoughts. I'm all alone. All of a sudden they hear your story and they hear, you've got the same thoughts that I do. You behave the same way I do. Okay, so I'm not a weirdo. This is what I used to think. I'm not a weirdo. I wasn't a mistake. Okay, there's something to this. So now I'm able to connect with people. And that really started to open the door of healing. And that's what I pray happens with this podcast, is I have guests like you on that share your stories and share those deep feelings and thoughts and emotions and what you went through. And that can connect other people. But always ask for help. You can even reach out to me. I have lots of resources.
Me too. That's why I started doing what I do too, because helping people get sober, it's like, I had to struggle and figure it out. And I don't want other people to have to struggle and fail and relapse and then eventually potentially, have a fatal overdose. Like, it's just happening everywhere all the time. And it's just not acceptable.
Right.
So condensing time is so valuable for people. And so, I mean, podcasts like this, helping people feel like they're not alone. Like, those of you guys listening, if you are struggling with any kind of like habit or behavior or substance, definitely reach out. Like, I have a ton of free giveaways, like freebies, and we can find a way to actually get you to where you want to go, depending on your goals and your values and what's sustainable. Like, it's definitely, you have a lot of options.
Well, this is a great opportunity. Why don't you share with the audience how they could reach out to you?
Yeah, so there's plenty of ways now with the internet. You can find me at my website. It's just NicolePoulton.com. That's where you'll find probably just everything that you could possibly want, all the freebies. You could also find me on Instagram. That's another good way to just direct message me. That's just Nicole.Poulton. And I mean, any social media, you can find me. I'm everywhere.
And we'll have all your links, of course. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, but I mean, always reach out for help. We'll figure it out. There's an answer. It's just, you got to reach out. You got to take that first step. We can't pull you along.
Yeah.
So what would you like to leave our listeners with?
Oh, okay. I have a little mind hack, I guess,
good.
that when I heard this, it blew my mind. And this is what healed, quote unquote, healed like 10 years of back pain. I was in back pain every single day. And that's why I was using my pills and all this stuff. And I heard this and I had this profound paradigm shift. And so I want to give that to you.
Yes.
So there are 6 human needs. At least I don't know if I talked about this with you on any of our other conversations, but I am obsessed with these 6 human needs. Everything we do as humans, we are trying to meet one of these needs. It's like a means to an end. So no matter what action or behavior you do, good, bad, or neutral, we are trying to meet one of these needs. These needs are certainty. We want to feel safe and, secure. We need variety, because if we knew what was going to happen at every given minute of every day, we'd be so bored out of our minds. We need variety. So we need some fun, some excitement. This looks like different food, vacations, whatever. We also need love and connection. Most people strive for connection or strive for love, but they settle for connection.
Ooh.
And then we also need, yeah, right. We also need significance.
Yeah.
And this one gets a kind of a bad rap because people think like, oh, that person's so full of themselves. No, we all need to feel special and seen. We want to feel significant. Those are our 4 primal needs. Those are being met at all times, no matter what. And then what a lot of people miss out on in life are these 2 spiritual needs, and that's growth and contribution.
Ooh.
Growth equals happiness. Contribution equals fulfillment. So if you're living your life and you don't feel happy and fulfilled, it's because these 2 needs aren't being tapped into. But I focus on the 4 primary needs when you're looking at addiction. And so this is kind of like the bread and butter of what I do. If you look at a behavior that you don't necessarily like, there's always something, right? We always have a next level, some room for growth. So those of you listening, think about a behavior that you don't totally love and analyze what is actually like, what good do you get out of this? Even if it's a negative action. So I'll give you a little example. When I was doing my pills, popping those pills, I was meeting the need for significance because I felt really cool doing drugs. Not advocating for doing drugs. They're not cool.
Wow.
I thought it was really cool. So I felt really special. However, it didn't just meet that one need. An addiction is qualified as quote unquote an addiction when it meets 3 or more needs, and it becomes a lot harder to change that behavior because it's so ingrained. You're getting so much positive and reinforcement. So with the drugs, I was also getting my need for certainty met because I knew for a fact if I took some of my pills, I would feel better. I would not have to feel the pain anymore. But on the other flip side of that coin, I got a lot of variety because every time you do drugs, you're not only changing your state, but it's kind of a different experience every time.
Okay.
And to top it all off, I was getting my need for connection met because there's this whole community of, people who kind of are rebellious, and you feel like you're part of that, but also it went hand in hand with when I was in pain, I actually got love that way because growing up, I was like, my mom wasn't allowed to hug us. That took a lot of attention away from our dad. And so the only time we could feel nurtured is if we're sick or hurt. Because then it's like, oh, my baby, let me hold my baby. And so I trained myself, okay, if you're sick or hurt equals love. So if I was hurting, I would need to take some pills. Oh no, I'm not feeling good. Love me. And it's embarrassing to say it. It used to be embarrassing, but now it's like so empowering to realize what was happening.
It is so empowering hearing this and so enlightening. So I hope you don't feel any shame because this is the reality and this is really good.
Yeah. And so really just focusing in, what is the behavior? What good comes from it? Because it's doing something. If it wasn't doing something good, we wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
And so just recognize it, and no shame, no judgment on the behavior or what happens. Like literally just take it at face value, take it as information, and then assess what do you want to do about it. A lot of people try and get sober by, maybe they stop drinking vodka and they start drinking wine, or they stop smoking and they, it's like we habit hop. And I think a lot of people have this problem where eventually they go back to whatever the problem is because they don't do it in quote the right way. If you look at the addiction or the habit or the action as just that, no judgment,
No
and then
story.
you reflect, no story, yeah, you look and see what need is being met, then instead of replacing it with a different behavior, you replace the behavior with something that still meets that need. So I'll give you a quick example and we'll wrap
Oh,
it up.
you're good.
Um,
This is
okay,
really good. Don't stop.
so somebody who say stops drinking, because they obviously, like, you can have your own reason for why you want to stop drinking, but say that's the goal, you want to stop drinking. So instead of, when you feel like, okay, I want to go grab a glass of wine or open a beer or have a shot or whatever, instead of doing that, you go for a
Yep,
walk.
that's exactly what I've done.
People think that's fine, but if the reason you're drinking is to connect with other people, going for a walk by yourself is not sustainable to solve the problem. So you have to really understand, what need is this meeting? Because if your need for drinking is to connect with somebody else, you need to replace that behavior with another way to connect with a person.
Yeah.
So it's really diving into why. What needs are you having met by this behavior? And it's crazy how it's so applicable, because as humans, we all have these needs, and we're all meeting the four primary always, all the time. There's good, negative, and neutral ways we're meeting them no matter what. And so I geek out over this stuff because it's like a puzzle. Once you figure it out with the pieces, it's so easy to solve.
And it's so empowering, because you're not just floating around reacting and looking at it going, well, I'm not hungry, but I'm going and eating, or whatever. I really don't want a glass of wine, but I'm drinking a glass. Why am I doing that? Because that's what I caught myself doing. I didn't want to drink anymore, and yet I was drinking a glass of wine. What the hell? Why? And so that's I love this. This is huge, because you're right. If you can, and I love the example of, if you're trying to connect with people and you do it with drinking alcohol, and you decide, well, I'm not going to drink alcohol, I'm going to go for a walk, you're not connecting with anybody. I love that. And so you're not feeling that need, and you're coming back from your walk and you do feel better because a walk is good for you, but you're not fulfilling that need.
Yeah. So then that's when the habit hop starts happening. So say, you're not drinking, you go for your walk, you come back, and then you still feel like there's something missing. So then you start eating because you want to change,
right.
You get that variety. You want to feel differently physically, or maybe we start watching a lot more TV because we can connect with the characters. And, there's 100 million different ways that we can have our needs met. But it's just so interesting how, when you look at it from, at face value of what need is it meeting, what good is coming from this, then it's so much easier to actually find something that can be, swapped. And then it's sustainable.
Yes.
And so that's why it's crazy. Like, so AA, you don't quote me on these stats, but I'm pretty sure this is the stats of what's happening is, people who go to AA, 2% of them get sober and stay sober for the rest of their life. 2%. And my clients, we're at a 100% success rate. And that just blows my mind. And I'm not saying I can say that forever, but at this point today, 100% of my clients have been able to effectively make the changes that they want for a sustainable amount of time. Like, as long, like up to today, it's been working. So it's just like, okay, we don't have to judge what the behavior is. We can actually just realize, why are we doing that in the first place? Like, what is the need that's being met? Because there's always something deeper. It's not, like, yes, there is that chemical dependence for a short amount of time,
right.
But you stop drinking for 3 days, you're not chemically dependent anymore, but you're still having these cravings and these triggers. So why? What is it trying to help you with? And just identifying what that does, and then being able to make the changes from there is just so powerful.
I think the reason why you're having the success is because you're getting to the root of the problem, and you're empowering them, and you're you know, I just, this is so empowering because you can slow down and you can start managing yourself. You can dial in and you can get to the root of the issues and deal with them rather than, like you say, habit hop, which makes so much sense. This is
Mm-hmm.
great. I mean, I'm learning a ton. I mean, even, I can dial
Good.
in my life even better, because it's true. It's like, this is great. This is great. Anyway.
Okay, I have
Yeah.
one more example that'll blow your
Yeah.
mind. It has nothing to do with addiction, but it does have to do with these 6 human needs. And I'm going to be like, guys, I'm open book, super vulnerable here, sharing my life with you guys.
Thank you.
If I'm having an argument with my husband and I think, okay, why did this start? What is happening? What need is it meeting? It's like, okay, so the reason we're fighting isn't even, not saying it's not valid, but it's unnecessary because the problem is not actually the problem. What I needed to do is say, hey, I need some attention. I want to feel significant. Or hey, I want to connect with you and feel the love. Or hey, I feel like a little uncertain in something going, it's like it actually can be applied to any area of your life. And by being aware and then mindful of it, it all comes back down to patterns.
Yeah.
If you can recognize your patterns, then you can utilize them and then create your own. So same thing with relationships. It's like if these disruptions are coming up in your life and you peel back the layers and you look at the needs underneath it, it solves so many problems.
Yeah.
I am like obsessed with this kind of research and
Me
stuff.
too.
I'm so for it.
I
Yeah.
spent so many years cleaning up messes that I made in my survival mode, and I'm really trying hard not to do that in the future. And that's the thing is that, you brought up a really good point because I've done that with my husband because he really is my safe space. He's one of my safe spaces. And I've never had that certainly not with a man. And so I can be my kind of ugly self, and he accepts me so far.
Yeah.
But it's that, and I think you can relate to this. Fortunately, I don't do it that much anymore, but all of a sudden you don't realize you're triggered, but you're triggered and you're reacting and it's damaging. And,
Mhm.
and inside you feel yourself getting wound up and worked up and reacting, and this is without self-aware, full self-awareness, but you feel it going on and it's so frustrating. And yet it's a train that's gone out of the station and has taken off and you can't pull it back in. And then when the whole mess is over, and my husband and I don't argue either, but in the beginning of our relationship, there would be times I would be triggered. And then you got to go and clean that up. And then you sit there and you analyze it then, and the damage is done, and you got to go clean it up, and you feel horrible, and you're beating yourself up. And by doing just what you are describing, you're going to avoid that a lot.
Yes. Yes. To literally where now in my life, it's like if I feel that triggered, or at this point, actually, it starts before it even leaves my mouth. It's like, okay, I'm triggered. Like, okay, this is a funny example. So just the other day, I decided I want to work out more. So I hate going to the gym. I feel like, you're just kind of like on display and
It is odd.
I don't know how to use any machines. I don't like going to the gym. So I decided I'll just jump rope. Like that works up a sweat and
That's a good workout.
cardio, it's hard. So yeah, so I decided to start jump roping. And the pace I go is like pretty consistent, but I didn't have any judgment on it. Then a week goes by and my husband's like, hey, I want to jump rope with you. So we were like alternating. As soon as like I would be like dying out of breath, he would take the jump rope and he would go. And he starts jumping so fast and he's like whipping the jump rope around. And the first thought in my mind is like, okay, so he thinks he's better than me, And it's like now this competition. And I'm just like letting him jump. I'm like, okay. And then I start jumping and then he's jumping. And then at the very end, it's like I do it for like 10 minutes. So the last 1 minute, I'm like, I'm going to try and go as fast as you because I kind of talk myself off the ledge. So then I'm going fast and then he's like, oh, I want to try and go fast too. So now he's going twice as fast as he was before. I'm just like, what is wrong with this guy? Has to tell me that he is better than me. And then I'm like, wait a minute. did he actually ever say those words?
I was waiting for that.
He never actually told me that. And so then I'm like, okay, why? Why did I have that thought? Why is this coming up for me? And then it's like just saying, hey, I love you so much. I had so much fun jumping with you. Were you passive aggressively trying to tell me that you're what's going on? And he's like, what are you talking about? No, with the pace I was going, he's like, I couldn't keep the rope at that pace. Like I would trip over the rope. And I'm like, okay. So it had nothing to do with how you thought of me. And so just having that dialogue inside my head, never left and I wasn't accusing him and getting angry. So now it prevents all fights because I'm able to realize when I'm triggered.
Right. Oh my gosh, I do the same thing. I do the same thing. I think sometimes, somebody's competing with me and I get and then I'm like, why? I would do the same thing. I do that in my car.
Yeah, you're like all defensive and angry, and it's like, oh, wait, they didn't actually verbalize that they have a problem.
No, they're not saying, hey, I want to race you or,
Yeah, no.
Oh my gosh. And empowering and because I could see, because I'm going in my head what I would have done. And I would have had an attitude. I would have had an attitude like, why do you have to show off in front of why do you have to make me look bad?
Yeah, like, I'm never jumping with you ever again.
You go jump over there. I'm going to jump over here. And like what the hell was that? Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah, isn't that so funny? It's like, no matter what it is, we always do it. So it's like, at what point in the process can you catch yourself? Is it after the fight's already finished? Because it's like, at some point you have to just get started. You just have to recognize, hey, okay, maybe I was triggered or something happened. There was some catalyst that caused this.
Right.
And then sometimes it's awkward, but it's in the middle of the fight or the argument. And it's like, oh, hey, let's take a pause. Like, I'm sorry I got defensive. This is what was happening. And then eventually it's like before the fight even begins, you kind of walk yourself through the process and analyze mentally of like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then prevent all of these conflicts. And it's not just in your relationship. It could be like at work with your boss or your coworkers, or a lot of times it's with ourselves. It's like, you look at like the whole body image issue and you start hating how you look. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's reanalyze what's going on. And so I think these skills at the fundamental side of things, they can really help you in every area of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been so good. I got so many takeaways on this one. I'm telling you, really great stuff. I mean, you really enlightened me today. And I know we had a great pre-interview conversation too. So this has been great.
I know. I love talking with you. It's so
I know
fun
it is.
every time.
I know we could do this for hours and hours and hours. It's so funny. Well, thank you so much. This has been really great. You gave a lot of great tips. And I just want to say to the audience, if you're struggling with any kind of addiction, there is help out there. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Nicole. I'll have all her information as well. We'll get this figured out because there's an answer for everybody and nobody deserves to suffer like that. Nobody. So thank you so much for sharing. This is great tips for helping people. I'm going to implement the six, what'd you call them? Means, the 6 means.
Human needs. Yeah. I use them every day. So I practice what I preach over here.
It's, that's one thing I love about doing this podcast is I get stuff like this all the time and I implement them in my life and it does absolutely make a difference. It's really empowering. Yeah. This could save so many relationships, just this alone.
Oh my gosh, I know, right?
Yeah, it's
amazing.
And you can even use these on yourself though, too, right? Just the relationship you have with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that whole you gain a lot more compassion for yourself, being able to realize without the judgment. I think that's the biggest piece. You take the judgment away from any realization you get. I tell my clients, like, everything is data. Yeah. Even a relapse, it's data.
Replace judgment
nothing
with
wrong.
Curiosity.
It's just there was something in the system that we get to fix now. So I think when it comes to your relationship with yourself and implementing these 6 human needs, it helps you understand yourself more at a deeper level of like, okay, wait, why is this always happening? Is it meeting one of these needs? Yes, it is. Secret time. Yes, it is. And so identifying which need it is, it just gives you so much more information to go off of. And it's so empowering. And then, yeah, I mean, I could just talk about it for days. But
And it's empowering because it's like all of a sudden, like I said, I'm not a freak anymore. Because I used to think I was a freak.
Everything makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
And look, if you've been through trauma, you're going to react. You're going to react. Mm-hmm. And so being aware of where it's coming from, that's where the responsibility comes in. I just reacted that way and I didn't like the way I acted. I bet that comes from trauma. How can I do that different? That's what's so important.
And it's an ongoing thing. Like I still do that when it's like, am I really hurt? Am I really sick? Like, does my back really hurt? Or could I just ask, hey, can you rub my back? Right. I don't have to have an excuse, And so it's just every little thing. And everybody is so different. So, I mean, having that self-awareness and being able to dive deep and analyze within yourself and find your own patterns, I think it's the most powerful thing out there when it comes to healing trauma.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Oh, Nicole, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing thank you for being vulnerable. I mean, you shared some of your stories and, the vulnerability and I know when I share some of my stories, because I share some of my stories on here that I've never shared with anybody. And that little shame rises up. It's like, too late. It's already out there.
Right? Like the jump roping thing literally just happened last week. So you guys are the first to hear that.
That's hilarious. I can totally relate to that. That's so funny. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been great. It's been great.